I was going into a gifted and talented program, so the requirement to get into that school was you had to take an IQ test. They said I did above and beyond, and they said the answers I gave were like the most creative, out of this world answers they'd ever seen, and but my mom never told me my IQ score because she didn't want me to get a big ego, and I'm glad she did because I feel like as a child, if I would have known at such a young age, I don't know, like I feel like it would have messed with me mentally and maybe made me get a big head. And like Socrates says, the wise man admits that he knows nothing. You know,
Yeah.
he said it all the time. He said, "I know nothing," because otherwise you'll make yourself a fool at some point in your life. You have to admit what you don't know. I've started giving IQ tests to clients and stuff like that. So I've given it quite a bit. There's a short version of an IQ test. There's a long version. There's versions that are just for children. It measures verbal abilities. It measures like cognitive thinking abilities in the sense of like your ability to recognize patterns and
Mm.
to have fluid intelligence, which is being flexible and being able to adapt to novel or new information.
Listening to you, sometimes what when I hear people express themselves verbally, I can notice that, they have a different cognitive ability to, see the world, right? And sometimes that's due to the vocabulary that they have been surrounded by, but
Yeah.
sometimes it just naturally comes out that they begin to use different words that to them maybe they seem, day-to-day words, but sometimes it's just, you know, very interesting how they express themselves, how they creatively create sentences. You start creating these patterns to create a melody. The melody creates harmonies. You can add more harmonies that go along with the melody. Then you create a song, and then it's so complex how the person was able to create it, and plus they added meaning with lyrics. And so that whole concept of creating a song or creating a piece of art goes does that help
Yeah.
children improve their IQ?
Well, that reminds me of fluid intelligence, what we were talking about earlier, because fluid intelligence, I'm gonna answer your question actually right after that. Fluid intelligence is like being able to do that, be creative, because if you have high creativity, chances are you probably have high fluid intelligence. And fluid intelligence is basically like being able to come to a situation that you've never been in before and then adapting or figuring out a new way to solve the puzzle that's never really maybe been done before, or combining old ways together to form something new. Crystallized intelligence, the other measurement on these intelligence tests, is more concrete in a sense that it's about information that you learned over time, like through school, maybe through
Mm.
your family. It
So
was
does
like,
that give a disadvantage to some people that might have not been too exposed to certain knowledge or information?
let's say someone's native language is not English, you know?
Yeah.
That's going to affect the test results. And we have to note that down. Actually, in some cases, we'll try to get a Spanish version of the test, or we'll get a translator who's well versed enough to give that test. Because if not, if we give an English version of an intelligence test to someone whose native language is Spanish, for example, that could severely affect the results of the verbal type of test on it.
Maybe people thought that I didn't understand because Spanish was my first language. I think for a lot of people, they might have thought like, "Oh, well, why is this guy not getting it?" Or "Why does this kid not get it?" But it was, maybe not that I didn't get it, but just that I didn't understand the language itself. So I
Yeah,
can
there's
see
a
how,
difference.
the language can be
Oh yeah.
barrier in the
Yeah,
intelligence
it
aspect.
makes a huge difference, and people don't give it enough credit to how hard it is to do what you're talking about.
Is IQ Does IQ ever represent some aspect of your economic, success? I guess what other people might say smart, but in their way they were smart themselves, in how they were able to amass their success.
Families that don't supply as much of a rich environment, and by rich environment, I don't mean money. I mean like a lot of stimuli, a lot of stimulation of like books and like toys and like puzzles. And if a house isn't able to provide that, like maybe because of a low economic status, because they have less resources to afford that kind of stuff, then yeah, that can kind of indirectly in some way affect intelligence, because they say the more stimulation you give a child with puzzles and games and all that growing up, you'll actually increase their intelligence in some way.
Sometimes you have
Yeah,
that golden child that, happens to be in a low economic status family, but, is just
right.
so bright that, he or she finds the resources necessary to, you know, to
Well,
develop their
full
IQ.
disclosure, I came from a family of lower kind of like, I guess, economic status initially. Um, and the doctors didn't think I was gonna, be much when I was born because my parents did drugs. My biological parents did a lot of drugs, and my mom drank a lot and did a lot of other drugs, like hard drugs, when she had me. They thought I would come out mentally challenged, if anything. But that's why it doesn't really make a lot of sense why my intelligence was, I guess, higher than average, for lack of a better term, in elementary school, and then continued on. My mom was always very open about, like, she never like said no, like you can't take, like if I wanted to take apart a phone, she said, yeah, go ahead, go take it apart, and that's enriching, but other parents might not let their child do that, and that creates a less enriching environment and might, as a result, not increase IQ or those skills, because you're building skills. When you do things, you build skills. So,
Yeah, and I think there's this research that a lot of students who were in GT, gifted and talented programs when they were younger, once they get older, a lot of their IQ or their gifted and talented, abilities, I guess, I don't know what to really
yeah,
call them, decrease, right?
I didn't know. That's interesting.
Substantially.
I didn't know that.
Like, hey, don't turn on that light or don't try that. And it hampers our curiosity of wanting to try
Yeah,
things. So I
yeah,
think that's given, it's provided a big problem nowadays because a lot of people they don't know what they want to do because they haven't tried it.